Well, much like bad superhero comics, American politics is prone to ill-advised crossovers. Tomorrow, members of the Fight for 15 minimum wage movement are teaming up with the movement Black Lives Matter to stage protests across the country. The theme will be Fight Racism, Raise Pay, end quote. They're seeking to link the struggle for higher wages with broader racial agitation in the United States. But will the connection empower both movements or merely shackle them together awkwardly? Kendall Fells is National Organizing Director at Fight for 15. He joins us tonight from Memphis. Kendall, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tucker, thanks for having us on the eve of the 49th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. Tomorrow we're going to lift and highlight the economic and racial injustices here in this country the same way that I'm sorry?
No, that's right, April 4th. That's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. The same way that Martin Luther King Jr. did, and we're going to link these two movements up, and we're going to highlight all the things that we've been doing in this country for the 20 million workers who have received wage increases.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. I'm always for higher wages, and I'm not even here to make a case against raising the minimum wage. I think you can make a case for it. I'm just surprised by your position on immigration. I guess that's what really shocks me. Here's your press release. It says, Fight Racism, Raise Pay rally, and it specifically says, quote, immigrant rights and Trump's immigration ban. Now, given that there's a lot of economic data that show conclusively that large-scale low-wage immigration lowers wages for American workers, how in the world did you wind up advocating for immigration rights? What does that have to do with wages?
Well, here's the real reality, Tucker. When you're talking about racial and economic justice, you have to remember what Martin Luther King said. What's the use of being at the counter if you can't afford the burger? The reality is there's about 64 million workers. About 46% of the workers in this country make less than $15 an hour. Overwhelmingly, they're black and brown people occupy low-wage jobs. 60% of Latinos make less than $15 an hour. About 52% of black workers make less than $15 an hour. Until all workers in this country, whether they're Latino, black, white, woman or man, are making a livable wage, we're not going to be able to get the economic engine of this country going. And that's why states like Texas and North Carolina and Hawaii and Chicago and Illinois, so on and so forth, are in the process of trying to raise wages to $15 because there's not a single city in this country where you can live for less than $15 an hour.
Well, Kendall, I'm not actually disagreeing with you, but let me just re-ask my question. So there was a Harvard study not long ago that showed that low-skilled immigration, legal and illegal, lowered wages for American workers by about $402 billion a year. So if you have a lot of people willing to work for less, wages don't go up, they go down. And yet, that's an obvious point. I think you'd know it since you represent a labor union, but instead you're taking the kind of Chamber of Commerce position that, we need more workers here because it saves on labor. And I just think it's kind of a weird position for you to be taking. Do you understand my question?
I understand your question clearly, but what I'm saying is I think that the actual issue that your viewers really want to know about is the $150 billion a year that your viewers are paying in order to subsidize companies like McDonald's and companies like Walmart.
Yeah, that's true.
Because their workers live in poverty. But Tucker, whether they're immigrant workers, black workers, or white workers, they live in poverty, so they're on public assistance. So they're on food stamps, they're in subsidized housing, and your viewers are the ones that are footing the bill while McDonald's makes off with $5 billion a year, Tucker.
I actually agree with you on that, Kendall. But again, I'm just going to ask you a third time. How does it make it better to bring in people from third world countries who are willing to work for much less? They will always keep wages down. Unions used to understand this. They were against wide-scale immigration because it hurt their own members. Why aren't you against it? You're not really serving your members on this, that I can tell.
The workers that are in this country, Tucker, they're already occupying these jobs. They're already working in these fast food restaurants. They're already working in home care. They're already here, and they're already occupying the jobs. The real problem with wages here in this country and the real problem with jobs here in this country are companies like McDonald's that are suppressing wages so people can't actually figure out a way to get a leg up.
Okay, I'm trying, Kendall. I'm trying with the whole supply and demand concept. Let me ask you this.
Tucker, listen, Tucker, I understand your question, but what I'm saying is these workers are already here in this country, Tucker. So what's happening is these immigrant workers are actually, companies are trying to pay them under the table. They're trying to pay them less than...
Look, in states, in Arizona, for example, when the state started enforcing the law that says only people here legally can work, it had a rising effect on low-end wages because there were fewer people undercutting the value of labor, right? I mean, this is just like, you don't get it, obviously, for whatever reason. Let me ask you a question. So you make $150,000 a year. I looked up, the labor statistics are public. How'd you get a job like that? And, like, do you have tips for people on how to do that at such a young age? I think that's like 10 times what the average minimum wage worker makes a year. It's a lot.
Yeah, well, we can talk about, well, Tucker, we can talk about how much I make. Obviously, that's public information, but I think the real question is, what has the Fight for 15 movement?
How'd you do that?
Well,
wait, hold on.
But Tucker, I'm the organizing.
Okay,
Tucker, I'm going to answer your question. What I'm saying is I'm the organizing director of the Fight for 15. Over the last 4 years, the Fight for 15 has been responsible for $62 billion with a B dollars in wage increases for workers.
So
22 million workers in this country have gotten. But you want to talk? You're talking about my.
I mean,
but the thing is,
how old are you, Kendall?
But Tucker, it's about what the actual point is. You want to talk about my salary, but what I'm saying is, why are we talking about my salary is public information, Tucker?
I know that,
but my salary is public information. But Tucker, what do you have to say about the 22 million workers that have been able to receive a wage increase? So mothers that have had Thanksgiving for the first time, fathers that's been able to give their kids Christmas gifts for the first time. But we would rather have a conversation about my salary.
No, I spend a lot of time on this show talking to people about ways to make wages higher. I think it's really important. And as the left is spending its time on transgender bathrooms, I want to talk about wages because I think it's meaningful. And I agree with you on that. I'm just merely asking, like, how do you make $150,000 a year when you're fighting for minimum wage? It seems like a pretty cool trick. And if you have tips for other people who don't make much, maybe you could pass them on, but you don't want to. You should write a book about it, though.
Well, I don't mind passing it on, but I think what your viewers really care about. Look, Tucker, 46% of the workers in this country make less than $15 an hour. Those are your viewers. Those are the people that are watching this show. So while they're on public assistance and they're not able to feed their kids, we're supposed to talk about myself. So it seems like the better conversation is.
It's just kind of interesting, but you don't think so, and I understand. Kendall, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot, Tucker.